Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever actually stopped to consider how we absorb complex information?
Like really complex information.
Right. Think about trying to master an entirely new language.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Because rote memorization, staring at verb conjugation tables until your eyes glaze over, that rarely works long term.
No, it usually just gives you a headache.
Exactly. Usually, the real learning happens when we are entirely distracted by something else. It happens when we're hooked on a topic that feels universally human, emotionally resonant, and maybe just a little bit furry.
Furry, I like that.
Today, we are deconstructing a fascinating piece of source material that uses exactly this Trojan horse method of education.
It's a brilliant method.
It really is. We're looking at an educational curriculum and the accompanying script for a language program called English Tea Break, specifically a lesson titled More Than Just a Pet.
What makes this specific document so compelling to analyze is its precise target audience. The curriculum notes explicitly state this script is engineered for pre-intermediate to intermediate English learners.
Which is a really specific group.
Very specific. If you are familiar with the standardized framework, that is the CEFR A2 to B1 level. And this is, it's a notorious stage in language acquisition.
Yeah, I've heard linguists refer to it informally as the Valley of Despair.
The Valley of Despair, exactly. Because at this point, a learner has moved past the survival basics. They can say hello, they can order a coffee, ask for directions.
Yeah, tourist stuff.
Right, the tourist stuff. But they are suddenly staring up at this massive cliff face of complex sentence structures, abstract vocabulary, and the kind of conversational fluency required to actually connect with another human being.
It is an incredibly overwhelming stage where a lot of people just simply give up.
They do. They hit that wall and they bounce right off.
Which is exactly why the mission for today's deep dive is so relevant, whether you are actively learning a language right now or just interested in the psychology of how we acquire new skills. We are going to examine how this English tea break script utilizes a topic almost everyone has a visceral, emotional connection to.
Pet companionship.
Pet companionship. And they use it to sneak in some very heavy linguistic lifting. We will explore how it teaches notoriously difficult concepts like the present perfect tense, but without making the learner feel like they are back in middle school grammar class.
Nobody wants to go back there.
Nobody. But beyond the mechanics of the language, we are going to extract the profound truths about the human-animal bond that the writers have hidden within this seemingly simple dialogue.
Before we even touch the vocabulary or the grammar, though, we have to examine the environment the script deliberately constructs.
The vibe of the whole thing.
Yeah, the vibe. The curriculum instructions for the hosts of this program are very specific regarding tone and pacing. They are instructed to maintain a slightly slowed down pace and a distinctly gentle, welcoming demeanor.
And there's actual science behind that choice, right?
There is. It's rooted in a fundamental concept in language acquisition theory known as the affective filter.
The affective filter.
Right. For an adult learner, trying to speak a new language is inherently traumatizing to the ego.
Oh, absolutely.
You are a competent adult in your native tongue. You have nuanced thoughts. But in the target language, you might sound like a toddler. That creates intense anxiety. And when that anxiety hits, the affective filter goes up. It's essentially an invisible neurological wall.
And once that wall is up.
Once that wall is up, no matter how good the lesson is, the brain simply refuses to process the language effectively.
The cognitive friction is just too high at that point.
Precisely. The brain is so busy managing the stress response that it has no bandwidth left for mapping new syntax. By intentionally setting a cozy, relaxed, almost overly friendly scene, this script is actively dismantling that affective filter before the first vocabulary word is even introduced.
You can actually see that psychological dismantling happen in the very first lines of the script.
It's right there in the text.
It really is. The curriculum introduces two characters. There's Ben, who is described as a humorous, enthusiastic dog lover, and Chloe, a gentle, intellectual cat lover.
It's a great dynamic.
To really understand how this affective filter is lowered for the learner, we need to hear it. The source material specifically focuses on this dynamic, noting that Ben, the male host, always opens, and he sets this slightly slowed, very accessible rhythm.
So how about we demonstrate that?
Let's do it. I'll read the male character, Ben.
And I'll take the role of the female character, Chloe.
And we'll keep that deliberate, intermediate learner pacing in mind. Here is exactly how the English Tea Break script begins.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Tea Break. I'm Ben, and I've just finished a very large mug of Earl Grey. I am ready to talk.
And I'm Chloe. I'm sticking with green tea today. How are you, Ben? You look particularly happy.
I am. My dog, Buster, finally learned how to high five this morning. It only took 3 months and a lot of chicken treats.
Well done, Buster. And that is actually the perfect start to today's episode. Today, we are talking about pet companionship.
And scene. You notice how that cozy vibe instantly disarms you.
It totally does.
The immediate sensory imagery of the large mug of Earl Grey and the green tea, it's an auditory invitation for the learner to physically grab a beverage, sit back, and just listen to two friends chat.
It accomplishes a staggering amount of heavy lifting in just a few sentences. It establishes non-threatening, highly relatable personas. Ben is highly caffeinated, a bit goofy, celebrating a ridiculously minor victory with his dog.
The 3 months for a high five. Right. And Chloe is grounded, observant, drinking her green tea. For a language learner sitting in a bustling city somewhere, feeling overwhelmed by their textbook, these aren't intimidating academic professors. They are approachable peers.
It lowers the stakes.
Exactly. This framing ensures that the upcoming vocabulary lessons will feel like natural advice from a friend, rather than a rigid academic exercise.
That relaxed cafe environment isn't just a trick to make grammar palatable either. It actually mirrors the psychological safety we get from the topic of the episode itself. The script wastes no time getting into the emotional weeds of why we bring animals into our lives to begin with.
It goes deep pretty fast.
It does. It starts by tackling a surprisingly heavy concept for an intermediate language lesson, the catalyst of loneliness.
A very universal human experience.
Ben shares the backstory of getting his dog, Buster, 2 years prior. He explicitly tells Chloe that he had just moved to a new city and his apartment felt too quiet.
That phrase, too quiet, is a massive linguistic hook for the target audience.
How so?
Think about the demographic of adult language learners. A significant percentage of them are taking classes precisely because they have relocated, perhaps immigrating for a new job, moving internationally for university, or relocating for a partner.
They are essentially strangers in a strange land.
Yes, they are intimately, sometimes painfully, familiar with the phenomenon of urban isolation. They know exactly what an unfamiliar, empty apartment sounds like. When Ben articulates that feeling, it builds an immediate bridge of empathy.
The learner feels
The
seen.
learner isn't just translating words anymore. They are recognizing their own lived experience in the dialogue.
The silence of an empty apartment really can be deafening. And the script captures how the mere physical presence of an animal shatters that isolation.
It changes the whole environment.
It's not even about interaction at first. It's just the ambient noise of another living thing. The breathing, the movement, the click of paws on the floor. It completely shifts the energetic geometry of a room.
That is so true.
Ben follows up this admission of loneliness by introducing a heavy conceptual phrase to the learner: unconditional love.
A big concept for a B1 learner.
Huge. He explains that Buster is always ecstatic to see him, regardless of whether he had a terrible day at work.
Placing unconditional love right next to the gritty reality of a bad day at work is a brilliant contrast.
It really grounds it.
It takes this lofty, almost poetic concept and grounds it in the dirt of a daily commute. Human relationships, as vital and wonderful as they are inherently conditional.
They require work.
They require constant negotiation, emotional labor, complex communication. If you come home from a brutal day at work, stressed and exhausted, that negative energy often spills over into how you interact with your family or your roommates. It causes friction.
But with a pet.
The script subtly points out that a pet operates completely outside of that human economic system of stress and social expectation.
The dog doesn't care about your missed deadline.
Not at all.
The dog has no concept of office politics.
Exactly. The dog is simply thrilled by the miracle of your existence and the fact that you successfully walked through the front door again.
Best thing that happened all day.
Right. For someone navigating the incredibly taxing cognitive load of living or working in a second language, that kind of pure, unjudging reception is a vital psychological reset button.
It's a sanctuary where you don't have to conjugate verbs correctly to be loved.
That's a great way to put it.
But the script doesn't just focus on the golden retriever energy. It smoothly pivots to Chloe's perspective with her cat, Luna. And here is where the writers tackle a massive cultural stereotype head-on by introducing the word aloof.
Aloof, which they contextually define as cool or distant.
It is the quintessential feline stereotype.
Dogs are endlessly enthusiastic, cats are aloof. But what makes this curriculum so engaging is how Chloe immediately uses her own lived reality to dismantle that exact stereotype for the listener.
She completely debunks it. She tells Ben that Luna always knows when she's stressed out.
The intuition of animals is wild.
And the specific image the script provides is so perfect. Chloe says that when she's working too hard, Luna will literally come and sit directly on her laptop keyboard.
Classic cat move.
Chloe interprets this behavior as Lena essentially saying, "Stop working and pet me." As a listener, you chuckle because it's a universal cat owner experience. But there is a deeper psychological mechanism at play there.
If we look at that image through the lens of modern occupational psychology, that cat on the keyboard is a profound intervention.
An intervention.
Yes. We exist in a culture of relentless connectivity, where the boundaries between professional output and personal rest have completely eroded. People will routinely push themselves into severe burnout because they lack an internal mechanism to tell them to stop.
They just keep going.
What Chloe describes isn't just a quirky animal behavior. It operates as an external biological intervention. The animal is highly attuned to the physiological markers of stress in their human companion.
Like what kind of markers?
Shallow breathing, muscle tension, lack of physical movement.
So the cat isn't just being annoying. It's recognizing a distressed state and physically interrupting the source of the stress.
A mandatory, furry, out-of-office reply.
I love that. A furry out-of-office reply.
Precisely. And the script backs up this anecdotal experience with empirical evidence. Ben responds to Chloe's laptop story by casually mentioning that research shows petting an animal actively lowers blood pressure and reduces anxiety.
This does two things simultaneously. For the language learner, they are acquiring essential health and wellness vocabulary.
Very practical terms.
Words like blood pressure and anxiety are highly practical B1 level terms. But conceptually, it validates the emotional comfort we feel. It tells a listener, you aren't imagining this.
The physical benefit is real.
The tactile sensation of brushing a cat or petting a dog forces a human being to be present in the physical moment. It literally shifts the nervous system out of the sympathetic fight or flight state and into the parasympathetic rest and digest state.
Which leads directly into what might be the most philosophically dense moment in the entire script.
Oh, the purpose part.
Yes. Chloe builds on this idea of physiological regulation to make a point about purpose. She states that pets provide a sense of purpose because, and the dialogue here is perfectly mundane, she says, you have to get out of bed because someone needs breakfast.
I was stuck on this one line for a while. It seems like such a heavy philosophical burden to place on a cat needing a bowl of kibble.
It really does.
We usually think of purpose as this grand, overarching destiny.
It sounds overly simplistic until you examine the clinical reality of things like severe burnout, depression, or the extreme urban isolation Ben mentioned earlier.
Right.
In those states, executive function often collapses. The grand, sweeping purpose of your life career or your artistic calling is entirely too heavy to lift. It's paralyzing.
You can't even process it.
What Chloe is articulating for the learner is the concept of micropurpose. It is an immediate, undeniable, and highly localized responsibility.
You might not be able to find the willpower to get out of bed for your own sake. The existential dread might be too thick.
But you will throw off the covers because another living, breathing creature entirely depends on you for its basic survival that morning.
That undeniable obligation forces structure. It dictates a routine.
And behavioral psychology tells us that routine is one of the most robust structural defenses we have against anxiety and depressive spirals. It forces forward momentum when the mind wants to remain static.
Think about your own daily routine for a second. What is your micro-purpose? Maybe it is a pet, or maybe it's a specific morning ritual, or a child who needs to get to school.
It's those small, unyielding obligations that keep the engine of our lives turning over.
And the fact that an English learning curriculum for intermediate speakers is successfully tackling the psychology of purpose through the lens of a hungry cat, I mean, that is incredibly respectful of the learner.
It really is. It assumes that just because a person's vocabulary in a new language is currently limited, their lived experience and their intellectual capacity are not.
They aren't children just because they are learning basic words.
Exactly. By engaging with concepts like urban isolation, unconditional love, and the architecture of daily purpose, the script treats the listener as an intellectual equal. That respect is what keeps a learner motivated to push through the frustration of the language barrier.
They aren't just learning how to ask for the bathroom, they are learning how to articulate the human condition.
But the scriptwriters are also remarkably pragmatic. They know they can't just paint a utopian picture of endless cuddles and stress relief.
Right, because a comprehensive language curriculum has to cover a wide spectrum of functional language.
You have to know how to express joy, but you also need the vocabulary to express frustration, obligation, and difficulty.
So the narrative takes a sharp turn into the harsh, unglamorous realities of the forever friend.
This transition is structurally vital. Ben brings the conversation back down to earth by introducing the concept of commitment.
He explicitly warns the listener that having a pet is not all cuddles and high fives.
He calls back to his earlier joke, the one where Buster took 3 grueling months and a mountain of chicken treats just to learn a basic high five.
That humorous anecdote is suddenly repurposed as a stark illustration of the sheer patience required in pet ownership.
And the word commitment carries massive linguistic weight in English.
It's not a light word.
No, it isn't a casual preference. It implies a binding obligation involving time, energy, and resources. And frankly, Ben's 3-month struggle to teach a dog a simple trick functions as a brilliant hidden metaphor for the language learner themselves.
How so?
Mastering a new syntax doesn't happen overnight. It is an unglamorous grind. It requires consistent, repetitive, often frustrating effort.
It requires commitment.
Yes. And to fully flesh out what that commitment looks like, the script has Chloe chimes in with her specific hurdles regarding Luna.
Earlier, the script dismantled the stereotype that cats are emotionally aloof. Now, it dismantles the myth that cats are entirely low maintenance.
They really aren't.
Chloe details the constant daily need to groom and brush Luna's fur. And then she drops what is arguably the most universal truth of cat ownership. She says, and don't get me started on the litter box.
Don't get me started on is such a fantastic piece of colloquial conversational English for a learner to absorb.
I use that phrase all the time.
We all do. It instantly signals a shared unspoken understanding of a highly tedious or deeply unpleasant task. You can use it for the litter box, you can use it for taxes, you can use it for rush hour traffic.
It teaches pragmatic social bonding.
Because complaining about a shared burden is a universal human bonding exercise.
It really is. And the litter box truly is the great equalizer of feline companionship. It requires unyielding daily maintenance. It is fundamentally unpleasant, but it is an entirely non-negotiable component of the commitment she just defined.
Ben immediately matches her cat-related chores with his own dog ownership reality check. And the imagery the script uses here is incredibly vivid.
He talks about the demand for absolute, unbending consistency. He tells Chloe, rain or shine, 7:00 a.m., Buster is at the door with his leash in his mouth.
The phrase rain or shine introduces an essential idiom to the learner.
It's a great idiom.
It denotes an unwavering commitment that exists entirely independent of external circumstances or personal comfort. And the image of the dog at the door at 7:00 a.m. sharp highlights a critical reality.
They don't have snooze buttons.
Animals possess an internal biological clock that does not care about human weekends, hangovers, or a desire to sleep in.
This loops perfectly back to Chloe's earlier point about routine and purpose, but it reframes it. What was previously described as a comforting, depression-busting structure is now revealed to also be a relentless, unyielding obligation.
You have to be consistent whether you feel like it or not.
And just when the learner is processing the physical and time commitments, the hosts hit them with the final, most pragmatic challenge of all.
The financial burden.
The script provides a very direct, very sobering economic warning. Chloe begins breaking down the actual monetary costs, specifically mentioning vet bills, food, and toys.
She explicitly warns that keeping an animal healthy and enriched can be incredibly expensive.
Elevating the dialogue to include financial reality transforms the script from a simple narrative into a piece of actionable, real-world advice.
It forces the learner to engage with the vocabulary of personal economics. They culminate this entire section by breaking the fourth wall and directly addressing the audience with a core imperative.
If you're thinking about getting a pet, make sure you've done your research first.
Do your research. It is such grounded advice.
They're essentially grabbing the listener by the shoulders and saying, do not just fall in love with the aesthetic idea of a puppy on Instagram.
Look at your bank account.
Scrutinize your daily schedule and honestly assess your willingness to walk outside in freezing sideways rain at 7:00 a.m.
From a pedagogical standpoint, this trajectory is masterful. By actively walking the listener through both the profound emotional highs and the gritty logistical lows of pet ownership, the curriculum is equipping the learner with a balanced, comprehensive vocabulary set.
They are teaching the art of nuanced argumentation.
Exactly. To successfully move from a B1 intermediate level to a B2 upper intermediate level, a learner cannot just express simple agreements. They must be able to argue both sides of a complex topic.
This script gives them the exact tools to praise the psychological benefits of companionship while simultaneously articulating the heavy logistical and financial drawbacks.
Which brings us to the moment in the source material where the writers pull back the curtain on their own teaching method.
Up until this point, the script has flowed as a natural narrative conversation. But then, Ben explicitly breaks the flow. He says, now, let's take a quick tea break to look at some useful English expressions we use today.
The curriculum officially labels this segment the language lab.
This is a highly effective, classic framework in adult education.
They have prioritized providing context first. For the last several minutes, the learner has heard target words like aloof, commitment, and vet naturally woven into the story of Buster and Luna.
Because the narrative is engaging, the learner's brain has likely already deduced the rough meaning of those words based on the situational clues.
But context alone isn't always enough for mastery. So the designers explicitly pause the narrative to provide concrete definitions.
Let's explore the friction there for a moment, because if the whole point of this effective filter theory is to make learning feel organic and conversational, doesn't suddenly stopping to say, okay, time for vocabulary definitions ruin the immersion?
It feels like it would.
Right, why not just trust the learner to figure it out from the context entirely?
It's a delicate balance, but explicit instruction is often necessary for accurate production, not just passive comprehension.
Accurate production meaning actually speaking the words correctly.
Yes. When you deduce a word from context, your understanding is often fuzzy. You might get the gist, but you might not understand the precise boundaries of how that word can be used.
You sort of know what it means, but you wouldn't use it yourself.
Exactly. Adult brains, in particular, crave certainty. We want to know the rules. By taking this language lab break, the script allows the listener to pause, confirm that their contextual guesses were correct, and mentally file the vocabulary away with clear, unambiguous parameters.
It actually reduces the anxiety of lingering uncertainty.
It solidifies the foundation before moving on.
So let's look at how they actually execute this language lab, because the mechanics of how they define these words are fascinating. Chloe starts by revisiting the word aloof, and the script notes that she specifically spells it out, A-L-O-O-F.
Then she defines it as describing someone, or a cat, who is not very friendly or interested in others.
Why the spelling bee approach?
Spelling the word out addresses one of the most significant hurdles in learning English: auditory processing versus orthography.
English spelling is a nightmare.
It is notoriously irregular. The double O sound can be mapped to several different letter combinations in a learner's head. By explicitly spelling it out letter by letter, Chloe provides the listener with a mental anchor.
So they can see it in their head.
The learner can visually construct the word in their mind's eye while simultaneously hearing the phonetic pronunciation and the definition. It forcefully links the sound to the spelling.
And her definition, not very friendly or interested in others, is perfectly calibrated.
It is. It completely unpacks the concept of aloof without relying on overly complex dictionary-level synonyms that would just confuse a B1 learner further.
It's incredibly clean. Next, Ben tackles the phrase unconditional love. We spent a lot of time on the psychology of this, but look closely at how he defines it linguistically for the learner.
He says it is love that has no limits or requirements. Pets love you just the way you are.
This specific definition is a masterclass in scaffolding.
Unconditional is a complex, abstract concept, arguably a B2 or C1 level word. To explain it, Ben uses the word requirements.
Requirement is a solid, highly functional B1 level word.
So they are using a slightly simpler practical word to build a bridge to a more complex, abstract idea. No limits or requirements.
And then appending the phrase, just the way you are, softens the clinical nature of the definition.
It introduces a common emotional idiom that native speakers use constantly, adding warmth back into the academic exercise.
It prevents it from sounding like a textbook glossary. Then Chloe comes back in with the heavyweight noun we discussed earlier, commitment.
Again, she painstakingly spells it out. C-O-M-M-I-T-M-E-N-T.
She defines it as a promise or a responsibility to do something for a long time. You mentioned earlier how crucial this word is for a learner's progression. How does mastering a word like commitment change a learner's capability?
It represents a cognitive leap.
A leap.
Yes. At the A1 and lower A2 levels, language is almost entirely concrete and immediate. You are learning the words for table, chair, apple, running, sleeping.
Things you can point to.
You are dealing with objects in the room and immediate physical actions. But as you transition into B1 and B2, you are forced to begin navigating abstract nouns.
You have to learn how to manipulate ideas, states of being, and complex societal constructs.
And commitment is a foundational abstract noun. You cannot effectively discuss a romantic relationship, negotiate a business contract, or explain your long-term career goals without understanding the parameters of commitment.
By initially tying this massive abstract concept to the highly relatable, concrete action of walking a dog every day for 10 years, the script provides a safe sandbox for the learner to understand how the word functions.
They anchor the abstract idea to a physical leash.
Finally, Ben wraps up the explicit vocabulary section with the term vet. He clarifies that it is short for veterinarian, which is an animal doctor, but he doesn't just give the definition, he provides a very specific, pragmatic reason for using it.
He tells the listener, it's much easier to say I'm taking the dog to the vet than the long version.
This touches on a constant frustration for language learners, the massive delta between written English and spoken English.
Textbooks prioritize formal, unabbreviated vocabulary, but native speakers prioritize efficiency. We truncate and abbreviate constantly.
If a learner rigidly sticks to saying veterinarian in casual conversation, they will sound slightly robotic or overly formal.
By explicitly granting the learner permission to use the abbreviation vet, the curriculum is teaching them how to sound natural, relaxed, and integrated into everyday speech patterns.
So that covers the explicit language lab portion. But here's where the source material gets truly devious, in the best possible way.
Hiding the grammar.
Woven throughout this entire script, hiding in plain sight behind the stories of chicken treats and keyboard cats, are implicit grammar lessons. Specifically, the script is relentlessly modeling the present perfect tense.
The present perfect.
In the very opening line, Ben says, "I've just finished a very large mug of Earl Grey." Later on, Chloe remarks to Ben, "You've had Buster for 2 years now."
If you have ever spoken to someone trying to learn English, or if you've studied it yourself, you know the present perfect is the exact moment many people want to throw their workbook into a fire.
It is arguably the highest hurdle in intermediate English grammar, primarily because many other languages simply do not have a direct philosophical equivalent.
The present perfect isn't just a way of marking time. It is a way of expressing a relationship between different points in time.
It connects the past to the present.
It tells the listener that an action happened in the past, but the consequence or the relevance of that action is entirely focused on the present moment.
Let's break that down using Ben's tea. He says, "I've just finished a very large mug of Earl Grey. I am ready to talk."
Exactly. The physical act of drinking the tea occurred in the past. It is over.
But Ben isn't telling us a historical fact about his morning.
He is using the present perfect to explain his current state of being. The past action, drinking tea, has a direct present result, being highly caffeinated and enthusiastic.
He proves the present relevance immediately by declaring, "I am ready to talk."
And the same logic applies to Chloe's observation. She says, "You've had Buster for 2 years now."
Right. She is describing a state of possession that initiated in the past 2 years ago, but seamlessly continues into the present second. He still has the dog. It bridges the gap between then and now.
So, from a neurological learning perspective, why is it so much more effective to anchor this incredibly frustrating temporal grammar in a story about a guy hyped up on Earl Grey and his dog?
Instead of a worksheet.
Why does this work better than a traditional workbook exercise where you just fill in the blanks with have or has plus a past participle?
Because the human brain is fundamentally wired for narrative meaning, not mathematical formulas.
That is the core of it.
In a dry textbook exercise, the learner's attention is entirely consumed by the mechanical form of the grammar. They are doing linguistic algebra, subject plus auxiliary verb plus participle.
It is exhausting, and it lacks context.
But when they are listening to Ben's story, their primary cognitive focus is on the meaning of the narrative. They want to know why Ben is so chatty.
Because their focus is on the meaning, the grammatical structure, the form, is absorbed subconsciously as the vehicle delivering that meaning.
The context does the heavy lifting for the rule.
Precisely. The learner hears, "I've just finished," and their brain naturally associates that structure with the immediate, visceral feeling of being full of caffeine.
They map the complex temporal grammar directly onto a relatable human experience, which embeds it far deeper into long-term memory than rote memorization ever could.
It is stealth learning at its finest. You think you're just enjoying a cozy cafe chat, but your brain is secretly compiling advanced temporal syntax.
Which leads us perfectly into the final major thematic block of the source material. Section 4, the ethics of adoption.
This is a really interesting shift.
The script introduces a completely new narrative device here to expand the scope of the lesson. Chloe announces we have a message from Yuki in Osaka.
Yuki is posing a listener question to the hosts. She asks, I've never had a pet before. Should I get a puppy or an older dog?
Let's dissect this structural choice. Why abruptly introduce a fictional listener from Japan?
It serves multiple strategic purposes. First, it acknowledges and validates the inherently global nature of the English learning community. The audience for a program like English Tea Break is distributed worldwide, and explicitly mentioning Osaka makes the listener feel like they are part of a vast, interconnected community.
It broadens the world of the script.
Second, and more importantly for language acquisition, it fundamentally shifts the conversational dynamic.
How so?
Up until now, we've had a two-way dialogue between peers sharing personal anecdotes. By introducing Yuki's question, the script models a three-way interaction. It demonstrates how to formally ask for advice in English, and subsequently, how to structure a reasoned, balanced response to someone else's dilemma.
And the advice Ben and Chloe dish out is an incredible reality check. They do not hold back.
Ben takes on the puppy side of Yuki's question.
Now, puppies are universally adored. They're the ultimate aesthetic ideal of a pet. But Ben refuses to sugarcoat the experience.
He admits they are cute, but quickly pivots to describing them as exhausting.
And he introduces a highly specific, very important compound adjective. He notes that puppies need to be house-trained.
House-trained is a critical piece of vocabulary for anyone attempting to discuss dog ownership in English.
It refers to the incredibly long, frustrating, and often messy process of teaching an animal the appropriate locations to relieve itself.
By immediately pairing the undeniable cuteness of a puppy with the stark reality of the word exhausting and the unyielding necessity of house training, Ben is modeling cautious, analytical decision-making.
He is implicitly warning Yuki and the learner against making massive life commitments based purely on emotion or aesthetics.
He's saying, look past the Instagram photos.
Then Chloe steps in to present the counter-argument, building a compelling case for older animals. She points out the practical benefits first. Older dogs are generally calmer, and their personalities are already set.
They've usually already learned the basic rules of cohabitation, meaning you get to entirely skip that exhausting house training phase Ben just described.
But then, she layers on a deeply emotional, almost philosophical point. She tells Yuki, I have found that older animals are very grateful when they are adopted from a shelter.
That is a remarkable sentence to unpack.
The use of the word grateful slightly anthropomorphizes the animal.
It does. It attributes a complex, reflective human emotion to a dog. But anyone who has ever rescued an older animal understands exactly what she means.
It suggests that these older animals possess a kind of emotional memory, an awareness of their past circumstances, and a distinct appreciation for being saved from a precarious situation.
And crucially, we have to look at the specific noun Chloe uses to describe where these animals come from. She introduces the word shelter.
Yes, shelter. She does not say pet store. She does not say breeder. She explicitly says shelter. This feels like a highly intentional, very careful choice by the curriculum writers.
What is the subtext here? How is the curriculum operating beneath the vocabulary?
Well, language curriculums never just teach isolated words. They inevitably export the cultural norms and conversations of the language's native speakers.
By explicitly contrasting the exhausting reality of buying a puppy with the calm, grateful nature of adopting an older dog from a shelter, the script is subtly embedding values of animal welfare.
It is introducing the learner to the cultural concept of adopt, don't shop, which is a massive ethical conversation in many English-speaking countries.
But the script never turns preachy. It doesn't scold anyone for wanting a puppy.
Right. By having the gentle, intellectual character of Chloe advocate for shelter adoption, the text frames rescuing an older animal as the wise, compassionate, and culturally respected choice.
It is incredibly elegant writing. In the span of answering one simple question from Yuki and Osaka, they have managed to teach the pragmatic vocabulary word exhausting, explain the messy concept of house training, introduce compound adjectives, and implicitly advocate for the ethics of animal rescue.
They pack an astonishing amount of cultural and linguistic meaning into about 4 sentences.
And again, it returns to that core principle of respecting the listener. It trusts the learner's ability to navigate complex, nuanced ethical dilemmas in a second language, reinforcing that they are participating in a mature, real-world conversation, rather than just repeating vocabulary drills.
Which brings us to the culmination of our deep dive today. Let's pull all of these threads together and look at the whole tapestry of what we've discovered in the source material.
The English tea break script, specifically this more than just a pet module, is a masterclass in empathetic educational design.
It takes a universally relatable, deeply human experience, the joy, the mess, the expense, and the reality of pet ownership, and uses it as a vehicle to propel language learners through the valley of despair.
It achieves a perfect synthesis. It seamlessly blends the highly practical, physical vocabulary needed to navigate daily life, words like groom, leash, vet, house-trained, and litter box.
With the deep philosophical vocabulary needed to articulate the human condition, concepts like unconditional love, urban isolation, and commitment.
It moves the learner effortlessly from the logistical chores of pet ownership to the profound emotional resonance of the human-animal bond, all while subconsciously mapping complex temporal grammar, like the present perfect tense, into their minds.
And we want to relate this entire journey back to you, the listener, because there are dual takeaways hidden in this analysis that apply universally, regardless of whether you are currently battling your way through mastering English or simply trying to navigate your daily life and routine.
The script implicitly, beautifully draws a parallel between the sheer dedication required to learn a new language and the dedication required to care for another living creature.
Whether you are sitting at a desk, grinding through vocabulary lists and grappling with the abstract rules of syntax, or you are standing outside in the freezing sideways rain at 7 a.m. holding Buster's leash waiting for him to do his business, the fundamental mechanics of success in both of those endeavors are exactly the same.
It all comes down to consistency and commitment. You do not master a complex language in a weekend workshop, and you do not build a profound bond with an animal in a single afternoon.
Both require the unglamorous, repetitive act of showing up day after day, rain or shine.
I love how the source material acknowledges that unglamorous, everyday reality right at the very end with a perfect touch of observational humor.
Ben wraps up the tea break by noting that Buster is currently staring a hole through him, which means the dog's internal clock has struck again and it is time for his afternoon walk. The lesson must end because the obligation calls.
And Chloe matches that energy perfectly by observing that Luna is currently staring intensely at her mug of green tea, likely calculating the physics required to knock it off the table.
It leaves the listener with a genuine smile, visualizing these highly typical, slightly chaotic animal behaviors.
It brings all of the grand abstract themes of psychology and syntax back down to a cozy, highly relatable conclusion.
It perfectly closes the narrative loop that started with that opening mug of Earl Grey. But before we sign off today, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over, inspired by the themes we've pulled from this dialogue.
Throughout the script, humans are firmly positioned as the caretakers. Ben and Chloe discuss the weight of the commitment, the sting of the financial burden, the endless walks, the feeding schedules, the grooming.
They're the ones providing the shelter, the food, and the care. But considering everything we discussed today, how these animals possess the power to dictate our schedules down to the minute, how their mere physical presence operates as a biological intervention that lowers our blood pressure and reduces our anxiety.
How they pull us back from the brink of occupational burnout, and how they literally force us out of bed to give us a daily sense of undeniable purpose.
When you really look at the mechanics of the relationship, who is actually rescuing whom?
That is an excellent question to sit with.
Something to ponder the next time your dog demands a walk in the rain or your cat decides your keyboard is the perfect place for a nap. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.